Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. I want to talk about our former president, Obama. You know, he's been in the news lately. It was fascinating because on a couple accidents, he actually said a half-truth. And that is that he thought the candidates for the Democrats are too far left and they're going to lose their credibility. So he was giving them, some friendly advice about what to do. And he also said that if you stay left like that, you're going to lose credibility. Of course, that's true. But he also expressed concerns about the middle class, and that's something we want to talk about a little bit, because he says the middle class is getting wiped out. I guess he hasn't looked at our programs to hear our explanation for this, because we agree that is true. And he also said that globalization is an evil. No matter what kind of globalization there is, some of it is evil and bad, but that's not what he's talking about. And also, he doesn't like technology, because that's causing unemployment and hurting the middle class. And I think there's a lot of things in history that could point out that just because there's technological advances, it doesn't hurt the middle class. I think about automobiles. How many jobs has the automobile industry created, and how much has that helped the middle class? But just the idea that you have technology advancing, there might be some temporary adjustments that have to be done. But I don't think people should be like the Luddites and just say, well, we have to stop all this advancement of technology. So I think the interesting thing is that that Obama's out front there. He's concerned about what's happening to the middle class and the understanding and the social disruption that is coming. But the one thing that he didn't touch on was the possibility that government might have contributed to it. And I want to make one point about the ex-president, about his insincerity or confusion about, why the rich get richer. Since he first went into office, his wealth has increased 30-fold. It's increased 30-fold, but he didn't produce anything except mischief and did a lot of harm with spending. So he did all of that. At the same time, he was able to get more power and control and all this mischief that he's involved with. But he doesn't seem to think that is a problem. So how did he get this money? How did the wealth go into his hand? He's in the upper income bracket now. It had to do with politics and special interests and Federal Reserve funding and all these things, but he doesn't touch on that. No, it's globalization and too much advancement in technology. So I think it's not quite that simple, and I would like to present a different scenario for the cause of why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer.
That's correct, Dr. Paul. There is nothing inherently wrong with globalization and people transacting over international borders. It's wonderful that people here in the United States can drink tea from China, or purchase marble from Italy, or caviar from Russia. There's nothing wrong with voluntary exchange. But add government to the mix, and that's where the problems come up. They erect tariffs, they subsidize industries, they sanction other nations, they manipulate currencies and interest rates, and they all do it. So nobody wants to do the right thing. Something peaceful and voluntary like exchange is turned into an unnecessary war. When you talk about technology, in addition to the car, think about the airplane, what it has done for people. We can crisscross the earth in a matter of hours. But what does government use airplanes for? They fire missiles out of them, at other people. Think about nuclear power, how a great source of energy, and look what government did with nuclear energy. Also, think about the internet, how it is rapidly decentralizing life on Earth, and we're able to communicate with people in seconds all across the world. And look what government is doing. It's using it to surveil everyone and for censorship. So the problem is not globalization or technology, but government interference in trade and technology in the hands of them.
Very good. And he also talks about having people being concerned about common values, and because he admits that there's a lot of uncertainty and people are insecure and they're having problems. It has nothing to do with the national bankruptcy or the foreign policy that's a total failure. No, it's a lot more simple than that, matter of fact. But he wants to complicate it because he doesn't want to be responsible, like all of the far leftists are, because they want the government for themselves, but not for the middle class. And then they claim that they're the protector of the middle class. And they rarely mention that maybe government spending and deficits in the Federal Reserve monetizing of debt and devaluing the currency has something to do with this. But he talks about people need to come together, which I think we can understand. There's a lot of animosity between this, and we talk all the time about the inequitableness of the division of wealth in this country now. But he said that we have to come together on common grounds today, common values. So his example for this is we all have to join in defeating global warming, and now that would be productive. And I have a little trouble thinking that's the answer because, of course, that argument has not been settled. Like they say, science has settled it. Well, they haven't. I bet the people up north are wondering about global warming with the worst cold winter they've had in November in a long time. But the whole idea that we can unite on that, at the same time ignoring the whole principles of liberty, self-reliance, a middle class, being related to a free market. The largest middle class in the world was ours in the United States, which is dwindling. The middle class is related to more freedom. And Mises always argued the case that if you destroy the money, you will destroy the middle class. That is, if you inflate your money and destroy its value, even though the purpose is to take care of the poor people and to be the policeman of the world and divide up and spread our wealth around the world, it's just, that's just all fake. And the real problem is that we're in this condition mainly because the majority of these people have either ignored or endorsed or promote an interventionist government, whether it's in foreign policy or taking care of people, becoming more people dependent on the government, and never talking about what it would be like to live in a free society where people decided their own lives, that they were responsible for it too, both good and evil. If they do dumb things, they have to be responsible for it. No, that's too rough. That you don't have any concern for people. But if you look at it, if you have concern for people and check out the differences between a country like Venezuela and a country like ours used to be, where was the wealth and where was the productivity and all the production? It makes no sense, and yet they fall back because those in charge do not want to admit that they contributed to it. And that is not a partisan issue, because we've mentioned so often that the big stuff is controlled in a bipartisan way with the spending of money, the inflation, the printing of money, the wars we fight, and the attack on our personal liberties. All these things are endorsed by the political leaders of both parties. At the same time, the people have to be distracted because the whole issue is, can we get rid of Trump, because they decided they'd hate Trump and blame him for more of the problem. But I think they're looking in the wrong places. I don't think it works, and I'd like to say that, Chris, if we continue to emphasize the answer, there's going to be a need for people to act on a better program, and that, of course, involves the belief and understanding of liberty.
That's right, Dr. Paul. It's all philosophical. President Obama is talking about solving big problems, solving climate, this, that. Government does not solve big problems. That's the myth. It multiplies big problems. Look at what it does with the wars. It invades a country and it creates enemies galore just by invading someone. And with welfare, they start out just a little bit of welfare here, and here we are 200 years or 100 years later, and half of the population of our country is on some kind of federal assistance. And we can go on and on. So, government does not solve problems, it creates them, and their incentives are backwards because they never stop once they start. The bigger the problems, the more money they get. And then the bigger the problems, and the more money they get. And now we're at the point where we're spending $4 trillion a year on something that just is creating more and more problems. This is a philosophical problem. You can't look at government as a problem solver. And until then, we're just going to keep blowing through all of our wealth.
You know, I think there's a lot of things that are in a belief system that promotes the individuals and the masses of individuals to support these programs. And I think the motivating factor is the fact of envy. It's easy to teach people to play on their envy because I think it's natural. If people are having a tough time and then they see, a certain segment of the economy having a lot of wealth and they're doing well and they say, I wished I had it. And sometimes that motivates people to work hard. In a free society, that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to, a little bit of jealousy on somebody else's wealth, if it's turned into something positive, I better work harder. How did he do it? And how much can I improve myself? But too often people, become envious and they hate it. Except, even though an Obama-type person might play this role, getting into office, but then he joins the gang. He joins exactly the same people that he condemns. And that's why the hypocrisy is, pretty bad, and it is very much bipartisan. I think of what it would be like if we did have a true free market economy and we allowed people to keep what they earned and there'd be no restrictions on it. Now, I could use Jeff Bezos as an example because he's a very wealthy person and a lot of people can't stand him and a lot of people are very envious, and the socialists now say, well, we have to just destroy them and do away with them. But I want to defend, the principle of a rich person like a Bezos. But I modify this because he's not clean either. Everybody right now is involved getting contracts, getting help from social media. So in theory, if you had a Jeff Bezos and others, and there have been others in our history that made it on their own, didn't ask for any benefits from the government, didn't depend on zero interest rates, and they were still able to make a lot of money, but people still became jealous and envious of what they did. And we have to stop those rich people. But I keep thinking about, Bezos has $109 billion, I guess. Does he really think it makes a difference in his life if he hits 110 or 120? Personally, it probably is totally irrelevant. And I think about how did he do this? Well, that's still ignoring the benefits he might have received. But he also provided like 700,000 jobs for people who do work and have jobs, and you can argue how much they should pay, but they have jobs. And what about a service? How many people that complain bitterly that want to destroy that and make sure nobody can even come close to a half a billionaire, that we have to destroy these people? How many people could even run a company like that? How can they provide, a service? I mean, that is a huge job. There's probably not very many people that can do that. I tend to think that these guys are burdened because, boy, I'll tell you what, if you have 100 billion and they mess up and the consumers turn against them and they go down to $75 billion, it bugs them because, that's a measuring rod. That's all it is. And they'll clean up their act if they're doing something wrong, and nothing is inevitable. But people don't have any confidence in that. And I think the real problem is what I'm saying is hard to defend because there's not many left that are making it on their own. But I think the average person that struggles, if they could only understand that the government should get out of their lives, let the people keep what they earn, no income tax on the people, and allow them to live their own life and allow them to spend their money the way they want. And all of a sudden, the biggest benefit, I think, from that is sort of a psychological thing of feeling self-reliant. No, whether you're making $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year or $1 billion a year, I think that satisfaction is something that people want. So even if you don't end up making $1 million a year, there's no reason, if you're doing it honestly and providing a service and somebody votes for your money by buying your product, people do feel good about that. And it should be very competitive. But the big thing is people say, oh, no, that's too rough. You're heartless. Where is your Christian charity? Well, I believe in a very charitable society, and that is the freer it is, the more prosperous it is. And those the record is very clear on that. There is no doubt in my mind that the authoritarian societies are always poor. Not only poor financially, but poor psychologically and poor in their way of living. It's an attack on integrity. So this is the reason why the free society should be advocated, not only for the financial benefits, but for the sense of satisfaction that makes people happy, where they feel good at striving for excellence and virtue, which is hardly ignored right now, because everybody right now is struggling to blame somebody else because they know what we know and we talk about, and that what Obama was talking about. The end is coming. There's something wrong with this, and that's why he's even willing to back off and say, hey, maybe we should come together. But his solution is everybody has to join in this battle against global warming. So I don't think I'm ready to accept his plans, Chris.
No, very good, Dr. Paul. I'll finish by commenting on something you alluded to earlier, how Obama was telling the Democratic candidates to calm down a little bit. They're going way too far for what the American public can handle. And I agree with him. But you know what? He has the same goals. It's just the speed at reaching the goals that he's concerned with. It reminds me of the USSR. They had the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. Mensheviks wanted socialism by democratic vote, and the Bolsheviks, they wanted to just burn everything down. So Obama is more of a Menshevik. He wants piecemeal to get to the same goal. But you know, we have our own goals here too. Unfortunately, I believe most Americans at this point in time, they don't want to enjoy their freedom either. And we're trying to convince the other way, that the way to go is towards liberty, not towards more government. We already have the biggest government to ever exist on Earth. What else do you want? You've already got it. This is the biggest. You think 50 trillion in debt is going to change anything? So we need to move in the opposite direction. That's the point we try to make on the show every single day. And hopefully someday Americans will adopt that view.
Very good. And I would just suggest to our viewers to maybe take a look at the statement that Obama made, not because he's speaking the truth, he's speaking half-truth, and he's playing on sentiments and playing on envy, but he's not willing to address the real problem, and that is the discrepancy in wealth in his own life. He made money and his wealth went up 30-fold as a politician that wasn't producing anything. It produced grief and spending and deficits, and actually his foreign policy was a disaster, and we're still trying to sort things out that he started in foreign policy. And so he hasn't contributed anything in positive, yet he's sort of like a saint now among the Democrats, yet they're not anxious to accept what he is saying. But he's looking at this now and has a few suggestions. He just has the wrong solutions. It doesn't understand the system, because he never mentions the idea that maybe there's too much government, and maybe we ought to emphasize something in this country that used to be important, and that is personal liberty for people to assume responsibility for themselves. That, I think, would go a long way to solving most of our problems, and that's what we're going to keep talking about on this channel. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.